It's easy for all of us to get tunnel vision and only consider the habitat of the property where we hunt. But it's really important to use a map, look at the surrounding properties, and consider the resources on those properties that may impact how deer use the property where we're hunting. Unless the property is several thousand acres, most of the deer spend a portion of their time on neighboring properties, and the same is true for turkeys. And it's important to understand what resources may attract or direct the travel of those critters. The home range size of most wildlife species is determined by the proximity of the resources they need. If it's food cover water in a small area, oftentimes home range sizes are much smaller. But if it's a long ways between food, cover, and water, those home ranges can get fairly large. Let's consider that the edge of a deer's home range is right in the center of a property and it extends for 2 miles. Draw that circle, and that's a large area that deer could be using in the neighborhood. That's why it's so important when preparing a plan to improve the habitat or hunt a specific property to zoom out and look at the habitat features for a couple of miles in each direction, and then build the plan according to not only the resources on that property, but resources on the neighboring properties also. By using a map, once I get an idea of how deer and turkey are likely used in an area, it's time to zoom in and focus on the specific property. When I evaluate a property at that level, I really hone in on food, cover, and water resources. Deer are very selective feeders. They eat the best and leave the rest. They can use their senses to tell which leaves are the most nutritious. So when they're eating low quality forage, that means high quality forage isn't available in their range. You probably understand this if you've ever watched a deer feed in a large soybean field. They take a bite, move on, and take a bite. They don't stand in one place and eat all the leaves off the top of an individual soybean plant. You've also probably noticed that in small food plots planted in quality forage, that the deer tend to remove the entire plot about an inch at a time. They don't start on one end, wipe it out, and then move over while this side's getting bigger and bigger. And that's because they're going over the whole plot, removing the best leaves, the most nutritious leaves, and leaving the rest. For deer to express their full genetic potential, they need quality food year-round. If there isn't enough quality forage, especially during the 2 stress periods, late summer and late winter, establishing quality food plots is a great tool to increase the amount of forage available for wildlife. Establishing quality food plots not only adds more groceries, but if they're designed as part of an overall plan, they can create great hunting opportunities. If a property only has a few small food plots, these can be great hunting locations when there is enough forage. However, it's likely that deer will limit the forage growth in these small plots by browsing them fairly quickly, and then search throughout their home range for better forage. By creating food plots that provide quality forage, especially when there are a few quality food sources in the neighborhood, will attract deer, creating great hunting opportunities on the property where the plots are established. Sometimes I tour properties and it's obvious someone laid out food plots without concern for the huntability of the property. When I lay out food plots, I don't lay them out with just the destination of that forage being the only purpose of the plot. I also consider how food plots can be used to make pinch points or travel corridors. When I'm laying out food plots, I consider what's next, what's over 75 yards or 100 yards, or how about those times when deer are not using food plots because there's a huge acorn crop and deer are staying in the timber. I want to make sure those areas next to the food plot are just as huntable as the food plot itself. I may wind around a large white oak that looks like it'll be a great acorn producers, or maybe a tree that's a great stand location. Creating a plan means you're impacting that property for decades to come, and you need to consider all of these factors. By using topo lines to see terrain features such as valleys and ridgetops, I can gain great information about how deer naturally travel through an area and the best locations for food plots. It is important to ground check a plan before creating a plot. By turning on the tracks feature, I can walk and mark on the map the exact border of the plot I'm designing. This data is saved and can be given to the person that will create the plot. This is when a combination of onX's hybrid map and tracks creates an ideal system for mapping the borders of potential plot locations. Once the plots are in place on the map, it's easy to see that many more pinch points and hunting locations were created. When I'm trying to identify where water is located on a property or even the surrounding properties, I usually switch on my onX map and use the topo feature to find ponds, perennial or intermittent streams, and other sources of water. These areas of water help me understand how deer are likely using an area as they move between food, cover, and water. Cover is an important resource that I look for when using the satellite map on onX. The key to creating quality cover for deer is managing so sunlight reaches the soil. In areas that have a closed canopy forest, sunlight cannot reach the ground, and I often refer to such areas as biological deserts because they offer no cover or browse for wildlife. When I find these conditions, I recommend opening up the forest canopy by terminating or removing trees that allow the sun to reach the soil and release native grass and forb seeds that have been in the seed bank for years. There are several ways to open a forest canopy, but the goals are the same. It's to allow more sunlight to stimulate the growth of native species to provide great cover for deer and other species of wildlife. By providing more quality habitat on the property you hunt than is available on neighboring properties, deer will likely spend more time using the portion of their home range that overlaps with your property. Having multiple patterns of food, cover, and water across the property can hold more critters and create great hunting locations. Whether you are creating a habitat plan or a hunting strategy, an onX map is an extremely useful tool. Being able to use all the features of onX while in the field makes this process much faster and more accurate.